You might have thought in your 60s it was time to retire. Today, Eric Brotman tells you it's time to actually graduate.
This is Retirement Revealed, where Jeremy Keil and his guests guide you towards making smarter retirement, investment, and tax planning decisions.
Welcome to Retirement Revealed. I'm your host, Jeremy Keil, and we're here to turn your retirement savings into retirement income. Today, we're talking with Eric Brotman about building a path to financial freedom. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's good to be here.
You got it, and I can tell from your background and your microphone, we've got the same microphone. You're a fellow podcaster, media person, but tell us a little bit more about yourself, including what you do for a living.
Sure. I'm a 30-year veteran of the financial planning world. Started a firm called BFG Financial Advisors in 2003 in suburban Maryland, and have grown it now to where we represent folks in 36 states, most of them multi-generational families around the country. And one of the things that we love is that we have a program called Financial Planning for All, where we're reaching folks not just at the high net worth level, but across the spectrum, so we can really meet people where they are to get started. So that's a little bit about what we do professionally. And personally, I'm married with an 8th grader and looking forward to paying for college in a couple of short years, and a sports fan, and just having fun. I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
I like hearing that. And speaking of sports, and you said suburban Maryland, I lived in Maryland, went to college there before I moved out here to Wisconsin. So I know, I think you're in Timonium.
Yes.
Am I wrong? Is there something famous in Timonium besides yourself and related to sports?
Well, there's the fairgrounds here. That's
yes.
The racetrack is here.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. There's still horse racing here, but only about 11 days of the year. It's only in August.
Yeah. What's the Preakness? Is that the one?
Oh, no, the Preakness is at Pimlico. So that's not in Timonium. That's in Baltimore. The Preakness is at Pimlico, and that is not far from me, but it's downtown.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. So I was close. It's been...
that's B+ work, Jeremy.
I'll take
at least.
That's
maybe
good.
A-. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, you wrote this book. It's called Don't Retire, Graduate. And I'm just curious where you came up with that title, because the idea of graduation is probably more something our retirement-focused listeners are thinking about with their kids or grandkids. It seems like their kids graduate a few years later. They get to retire. So tell me how this got reversed in your book title, and what your thoughts there.
Sure. It dawned on me that retirement is it's the only milestone other than our own demise. It's the only milestone that is truly a retreat and not an advancement. And I would like to think that retirement can be an advancement to our next level of adulthood, our next phase of life. And so I think we need to rethink what retirement means. I don't like to think of retirement as the absence of work. I think retirement is the absence of needing to work. So if you're financially independent, if you've reached that financial freedom mark, whether you're 42 or 82 at the time, if you've reached that, then you get to do basically whatever you want, what your passion is during the day. And ideally you won't need the money, but you might decide to do coaching or consulting or teaching or moonlighting or project work or part-time things, or you might decide to be a volunteer and be involved with family or travel or other things. But I think we need something to move towards. Retirement historically was a disappearing act. To retire in the UK is to go to sleep. And I don't know anyone who wants to go from 40, 50, 60 hours a week and being really engaged with the community and with what they do for a living to daytime TV and shuffleboard. And I just think we have to rethink it, because we're living 30 plus years in a lot of cases into retirement. It's half our adult life. It needs to be as rewarding and as amazing as the other chapters. It's the 3rd trimester of life. Let's enjoy it.
Yeah, I like that. There's a few things in there, 3rd trimester of life. I didn't know that in the UK that retire means go to sleep, but I think that makes sense. I get that now. Yeah. I met someone at a conference called FinCon. He's from Switzerland. He was telling me in the language of German, the German language, there's no verb to retire. In fact, it's retired. Like someone, like I was retired. Like somebody retired me.
Yes,
was what he was saying, and just how that language. That concept of just what the word means in a language creates how people view retirement, right? Well, retirement was done to me in the language of German. And like I said, in the UK, retirement means or not retirement, but I'm going to retire to bed, right? I'm
Yeah,
going to
retire for the night.
Yeah, retire for the night, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so these aren't positive
They're
associations
not.
with the word retire. So I see now why you came up with the word graduate
Yeah.
to describe this.
Yeah, Otto von Bismarck was one of the folks in Germany who decided retirement was being done to people. And I believe, and I quoted him in my book actually, but one of the things he said is that older people should be happy with the retirement they're sent into. I'm paraphrasing, but that's really close. Like literally, it's to get rid of the senior members of the team to make room for others. And it got worse actually in the U.S. at Johns Hopkins. There was a professor, Osler, after whom there is still a building on that campus in Baltimore, who said that between 20 and 40, these are your years of production. Between 40 and 60, you're tolerable. And once you're 60, you're basically being put out to pasture as worthless.
Yeah. Well,
I'd like to think I'm more than tolerable, but apparently that's where I am right now.
I guess so. Well,
Yeah.
like this put out to pasture, we're talking the horses earlier. That's
Well,
you don't want to be put out to pasture yourself as a retiree.
I don't. I sure
Thinking
don't.
through what you said, financial planning for all. It's what's interesting about financial planning for all is a lot of times if you don't have a certain level of assets, if you don't have that highest level of investments, it's tough to find kind of a
Right.
comprehensive level of planning. When you're talking about financial planning for all, I think you also mean kind of everything included. Tell me when you talk about financial planning for all, what should you be looking at as a retiree, as someone approaching retirement? What things should you be doing to get ready for retirement?
Well, I think that's a two-part question. Financial planning for all, for us, means that it's attainable. It's something that folks, even who don't have assets to manage, are able to, on a subscription or a flat fee basis, get access to good financial advice to make good decisions around their employee benefits or their insurance policies or their investment portfolio or their real estate or debt or taxes or legal or other things. So that's what we mean by all. We tried to create something that is affordable enough that folks who are looking for planning can get it, even if they're not multimillionaires, and that feels like a win. The second part of your question is, what are the things that retirees or pre-retirees need to be doing to get ready? The first thing is to start early. And I don't mean just start saving when you're in your 20s. I think that speaks for itself on a show like this. But I mean start thinking about what you want to be when you grow up. And that is a much more qualitative than quantitative conversation. And most of us haven't been asked that since we were about 9 years old. And I don't know about you, but I was either going to be an astronaut or I was playing for the Baltimore Colts, neither of which is likely now. But for, nonetheless, it is important to figure out what we want to be, and more importantly, who we want to be when we grow up. And that means determining what we want our lifestyle to look like. Where do we want to be geographically? What kind of housing arrangement do we want? Do we want to be close to family? And how is that possible? Do we want to live with other people? Are we married? Are we widowed or divorced and therefore looking for friends potentially to live with? You've heard the Golden Girls phenomenon where seniors are living together because it's communal, but also because they can help take care of each other and share some expenses. There's lots of different living arrangements, and those are major. And then having conversations with your kids about what's most important to you and making sure you have all of these things tied up before you ever put in 2 weeks' notice. Because once you've quit, for lack of a better term, if that's in fact what you do, you have lost your identity in this country. It's very sad, but when people ask, tell me about yourself or who are you, the first thing we say is, I'm an accountant, I'm an architect. Well, no, you're a father and a friend and a churchgoer and a hockey fan, and you're lots of things, but that's just what you do all day. And if we identify who we are with what we do, invariably, when we don't do that anymore, we've lost our identity. It's actually quite sad. And retirees tend to become very depressed because they're not sure who they are anymore. And so, there's so many different ways to be a happy retiree. And I've stumbled on some of what I refer to as the 3 secrets of the happiest retirees, which I'll be glad to share with you. But I do think there's more to this than just money. It's not just the money. Being able to afford to not work is not the same as having an enriched life moving forward. So I think you start with, where do you want to live? What do you want to do? Do you want to be able to hike? Do you want to be near a beach? Do you want to be near transportation? Do you like to travel? What's important to you? And that's the start. And then you can back into, well, what's this going to cost? And is this doable? And how are we going to handle those things?
Yeah, we had Fritz Gilbert on the podcast. He was talking about his keys to successful retirement. And it was interesting about him. He was saying that he did a study, and of course, he also has his own experience that he talks about. But as he was approaching retirement, he almost only thought about the money. And then after retirement, he almost thought nothing at all about the money, but the things that to do, the day-to-day activities. And people, he interviewed a lot of people before retirement, and they all told him that. And he just kind of didn't believe it. Like, no, I need my spreadsheet to work out. And then he hit retirement, and that's exactly what he was looking at, is all the non-financial aspects of retirement. And of course, he couldn't really feel comfortable retiring unless he had the money. But it was interesting where he kind of properly realized after retirement that money was a tool, not the goal. But it really feels like as you're heading to retirement, like that is the goal. Is okay. The goal is to have $1 million or $2 million or whatever the number might be. No, that's just the goal is kind of beyond that. It's like the $2 million is what gets you to actually meet those goals. Well, you talked about them or teased them a little bit. We got to hear what are the three secrets of the happiest retirees?
All right, the happiest retirees, and this is not based on any scientific study. It's anecdotal from doing this for 30 years, but I've watched retirees retire successfully and some far less successfully, and the ones that are happy all have the same three things in common. Number one, they're debt-free. And not all debt is bad debt. We know that certain things like a mortgage or business loans or other things can be leveraged for an investment. So I don't mean you necessarily have to have a zero on your balance sheet under liabilities, but no adverse debt, no consumer debt, no student loans, car payments, credit cards. Any of the consumer garbage has to be gone. Ideally, the mortgage is gone too, although not always. Particularly if you were lucky enough to get one 5 years ago at 2%, maybe you don't care. But in general, the people who don't owe any money to anyone are feeling a whole lot better and are much happier when they retire. Second thing is they have their health. They've taken care of themselves. You know, you don't wake up one day when you're 65 and go, you know what, I think I'm going to start eating right and hit the gym. That's not really how it works. We need to sort of do this all along our lives so when we get to that age, we're already in some good habits. At the very least, start a routine a few years before you retire so that you're already in that habit. It is so much easier to stay healthy than to get healthy. And if you've let yourself get unhealthy because you're tied to your desk trying to reach that couple $1 million, whatever it is, you're not doing yourself any favors, because I know a lot of people who have a lot of money and are 80 and not healthy and they're miserable. It is much more important to have a quality of life than to have that extra whatever dollars it is. There's a diminishing return on it, you know? So I do think that maintaining your health all along matters the most. And then the third thing is to have a sense of purpose, a literal reason to get out of bed every morning. Because if you don't have a reason to get out of bed every morning, suddenly instead of getting up at 6 and starting the day, it's 7:30 and then it's 8:30 and then it's 9:30 and then someday you wake up and you're that person still in their pajamas at 12:30 who doesn't even bother getting dressed and is sitting around the house. And that is literally sitting waiting to die. It makes no sense. That's not to say we don't all enjoy a day off here and there and some leisure, of course. But if you don't have a purpose, whether it's volunteering for something that matters to you or being engaged on a nonprofit board or doing some consulting or teaching or working with young people or working with old people or doing something that keeps you engaged, you're just not going to be happy and you're not going to thrive. And so those are the three things: debt-free, healthy, and with purpose.
Yeah, I like that sense of purpose. That's something we had Jordan Grummett, known as Doc G, on the podcast, and he was talking about. I asked him, as a doctor, what is the best way to stay healthy? Like, what's your number one healthy tip? And I was thinking he'd say, get 10,000 steps or drink enough water. And he said, have a sense of purpose. And so he said, if you have a reason to get up out of bed in the morning, you're also going to take care of yourself and do things that give you the ability to get out of bed tomorrow. Right? Yeah. If you have that sense of purpose. So that sense of purpose is important, and it's a doubly good thing where it helps you perhaps focus more on the health piece of it too. Related to the debt-free, I wonder too what your thoughts on people who have a regular monthly paycheck coming in. It seems like when I talk to somebody and they take $2,000 out of their investment account, it's kind of nerve-wracking. But if they get $2,000 from their Social Security check or from some sort of other kind of consistent monthly basis, they seem to be very happy with it, even though it's financially maybe exactly the same thing. Just having that that money coming in. Somebody called it mailbox money, I heard previously.
What it really is, if you think about your retirement savings, think about your nest egg like an orchard. Picking the fruit from those trees every year is perfectly fine. The trees will continue to bear fruit, and every year you pick more fruit. If you start chopping branches off of those trees because your withdrawal rate is too significant, then you will by definition have less and less and less fruit every year, and therefore have to chop off more and more branches, and your orchard will shrink. That is a horrifying thing. There are a lot of people who retire and then are totally inert about how in the world are we supposed to utilize what we've built. We spend 40 years of our careers or more building it. Accumulation, the math is so easy. You put in X dollars a month for Y years and you get Z%, and here's how much money you have, right? But figuring out how to turn it into income is a completely different skill set, and it's something most humans have never had to do before. And so suddenly you have to look at, well, how is this going to be taxed, and how does this affect my lifestyle? And it's like whack-a-mole. Well, if I take money out of this account, it's going to increase my Medicare premiums, which is going to mean I need additional money over here. And how do I utilize capital gains? And how do I take advantage of all these things? And so, when we start diversifying assets, it's more than just picking the right stocks or bonds or funds or whatever. It's also tax diversification. And I know I'm speaking CPA now, and I'm not a CPA, and I'm never going to be a CPA, but tax diversification means you have some income that's ordinary income, you have some income that's capital gains or return of principal, and you have some that's tax-free. And done right, you can time and manipulate the years in which you take different kinds of income based upon whatever shenanigans are happening in Congress at that point. Because every time there's a turnover in Congress from one party to the other, and I don't care, this is not a political statement, I don't care what side you're on, but every time there's a shift in policy. And one group says, oh, we want to be punitive to capital gains. Another one says, well, we want to be punitive to ordinary income. And there's this constant struggle. And so being flexible to be able to say, you know what, this is not a year to take a lot of money out of account A. Let's reach for account B because we're not comfortable with the tax regime. You can actually create your own arbitrage.
Yeah, it's amazing too. And you talked about kind of the whole amount of things you need to do to put together a successful retirement graduation. Tell me, what one or two things do we need to know about your book, the Don't Retire, Graduate book?
First of all, it is not a textbook, despite the fact that it has a scholastic theme. It's designed to be a fun read. I wrote it in the first person. This is not designed to be a difficult read. The second thing is each chapter is essentially its own course. So there's a cash management and a risk management and an investment management and so forth. And it's 101, 201, 301. So there's the whole book is organized into freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. And those are meant to be years of your financial lives. So freshman year, those courses are things like getting out of debt and figuring out your employee benefits and some of the early things that you'll do as a young person. Sophomore year is about the big decisions. Do I buy a home? Do I get married? What about kids? How do these things impact us financially? Junior year, I consider sort of the investment year, but also the tax year where you've got the highest income at that stage of your life and you're trying to figure out that. And then senior year is very much around not just estate, but legacy and what is your vision for the future and how do you leave behind something more valuable than money. And so it's designed to meet you where you are, and it's something where you can skip around a little bit. The second thing I would say is that it comes with a workbook. At the end of every chapter is an extra credit assignment, because I don't know about you, but I hated homework and I always did extra credit. So we only have extra credit assignments. There's no homework involved. But the extra credit assignments, if you were to do them all, we created a workbook that incorporates all of them and has worksheets and things. If you were to go through that, you would essentially have built your own financial plan and not just quantitatively. You'd have thought about the things that you want to do and what you might want to be when you grow up and how you want to communicate to your kids. So some of it is financial, some of it's math. I apologize for you non-math people. There's a little math involved. But some of it's also vision, and that's something we all need to look at. So that's what I would say about the book. It's not a hard read at all. It's designed to be accessible and hopefully entertaining. I try not to get too far into the weeds, but obviously there's some details that are important. But hopefully it's the kind of thing that is a financial literacy tool, and it's certainly not preachy.
Yeah, and I've gone through your first edition of the book, and this is a second edition. So you've got some updates since you wrote the book the first time. So it's a helpful thing there. And of course, you wrote a book on retirement. I'm curious for you, how do you envision spending your own retirement?
It's a great question, and I'm grappling with it. I really am. I was at a conference in January of this year. I was in Southern California with about 800 financial advisors, and there are incredible resources for what the advisory community is calling G2, which is second generation. These are the up and coming advisors. How do they get ready for the next transition and for equity ownership and for taking that next leap in their career? There are resources everywhere. The only resources available for G1, the OGs, if you will, the only thing that's available for us is how to monetize your business and how to have a succession plan so you can leave. But the conversations I was having, and I was actually feeling a little bit alone, and I had a conversation with 5 or 6 other folks, and we're all going through the same stuff, which is trying to figure out who and what we're going to be when we aren't this. And so the very same things that I wrote about, the very same things that I've coached people on, I'm coaching myself on. And so figuring out how to stay engaged with the firm that I helped build, that I frankly started 21 years ago, but also how to have a different lifestyle and a different quality of life, and how can I stay not only relevant and sharp, but having fun. And so I created something called the Joy Revenue Matrix, just to figure out what the last 10 years or so, plus or minus, of my career time, the time where I'm full-time, for whatever that means. And, it's just a simple 4-box formula where the vertical axis is joy and the horizontal axis is revenue. What are the things that make me happy and make me money? What are the things that make me happy but don't make me money? What are the things that make me money but don't make me happy? And then what are the things that don't do anything for me that I have to do for whatever reason? And I took that, and I've done this with consulting clients. I do a lot of consulting with financial advisors, and it helps us figure out the things we want to do more of and really embrace, and the things that we're passionate about, but also the things we can either outsource or stop doing completely. And it's amazing how when you get rid of some of those thou shalt nots in your own world, how much happier I am now than I was a couple months ago, just by virtue of that exercise. I'm now concentrating and focusing on the things that I love to do that are also moving the needle for the firm, but also things that I love to do that make me tick personally. And so, what does my retirement look like? My retirement looks like I'd like to work until I die, but in a very, very different way. I'd like to do more consulting and more teaching and more mentoring. I love to mentor young advisors. I expect to be living at or near a beach, and I expect to be working in a spot where I'm in shorts and flip-flops every day. I can use my brain without having to feel dolled up. And, ever since COVID, I haven't worn a suit and tie. So that was already progress. But eventually, Bermuda shorts and flip-flops are the uniform. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. I appreciate sharing all that. And thankfully, you've put some time into the thinking about it, right? And I think it kind of goes to show how you just there kind of walk through your thought progression that a lot of times when people are close to retirement, they feel like they need all the answers before they actually retire. And I think what you just demonstrated is that, no, you need the right questions, and you're asking yourself the right things and kind of asking yourself in the order of, okay, let's figure out the joy part first, and then the revenue part, the money part to come into it. And you as a business owner, I imagine it's easier to walk into the office when you know you're going to be doing the things that you want to do. And not everyone is in the business owner capacity. I tell our clients that aren't a business owner that you need to plan for these things ahead of time. It's almost like it's a lot easier to walk into the office when you know you don't have to go to the office. You've got all the money set aside that you can walk out of there anytime you want. It's a lot easier to actually show up. It's like you know the retirement set and you can do it at any time. It's almost more joy-filled to actually go and do your job then.
When you're working because you love it, not because you have to do it, it's wonderful. And I will tell you, I'm at that stage in my life where I tell people, I tell my partners and colleagues, I'm working for fun. You know, I could quit tomorrow and never work another day in my life, and I would be okay. But I'd be bored silly. Like, I can't even do a 3-week vacation without having something to engage me. So I never want to be idle. I will not thrive. My wife does not want me puttering around the house, I assure you. And I won't thrive. And so making sure that I stay active and stay involved, and that I create balance for myself and have time for family and time for friends and time for the things that I love to do. And I'm a foodie, and I love good wine, and so I like to travel, and there are things I like to do. But I can also continue to make a significant difference. And so I think what happens at a given stage of your career, at least for me, is I'm becoming less of an everyday third baseman and more of a utility infielder, where I'm now able to plug and play and get involved when there are big scenarios involving any of our clients, even if it's not a relationship I've been managing for 20 years. There are certain things when there's a tragedy or an opportunity or something happens that I can come in and help make a difference in that conversation because of my level of experience, without necessarily having to do all the day-to-day blocking and tackling. And I just use baseball and football in the same metaphor, which makes no sense. But if it were one thing, that's what it would be.
Yeah, I like it. Good. Well, you said you're having fun doing what you're doing. I want to keep. I want to do a little bit of fun right here. I've got. I was going to call it 5 quick questions, but I'm going to call it 5 fun quick questions.
Ooh.
So we'll hear 5 fun quick questions with Eric
I am
Brotman.
unprepared for this. For the record, I am unprepared for this.
You got it. So here we go.
Right.
5 fun quick questions with Eric Brotman. Number 1, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a. That's a great question. What do I want to be when I ask so many people this? How do I not have this answer?
That's why I did it first.
I want to continue to be an influencer. I want to be a coach and a mentor and an influencer and make a difference in people's lives.
I like it. Which might come to our second question. What is your purpose and passion?
My purpose and passion is protecting people. It is taking care of families. It is helping protect people from the things that are, from the icebergs that are out there, so to speak. I was an English major in school, and I consider myself a little bit like Holden Caulfield. I'm the catcher in the rye, trying to make sure people don't fall on their face, and so I feel like the safety net for a lot of humans.
Yeah, great. What's your number 1 tip for financial success?
Start immediately. Don't wait. I don't care how much money you have, how much income you have. It is always better to start today than tomorrow or the day after. And in conjunction with that, step 1 is recognizing that you have to take that first step, figure out if you're going to do this alone or with resources, and always pay yourself first. The first bill you should pay every month is to whatever you're building, long-term savings, retirement, debt reduction, whatever it is. It should always be the first bill every month is your own.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Now, how much do you need to retire?
Well, need or want. I think the ideal plan is to have 25 times your net expenses, so your annual net expenses. So if we were to use a rule of thumb, that's the number, and here's why. If you look at your gross income is not necessarily that important because so many things are being set aside. You're being taxed like crazy in most cases, and figuring out what your monthly expenditures are, and then having enough of an orchard, as we called it, enough wherewithal that you can pull 4% or less from that, ideally is a perfect financial freedom recipe. So if you need $100,000 in order to pay the bills every year, that means $2.5 million, and it's pro rata from there.
You got it. Now, what's the biggest mistake you see people make when they retire?
Not have a plan. And I don't mean a financial plan. Not have a qualitative thing to do and trying to figure it out on the fly when they're sitting around. It's a disaster. And people don't last very long. They don't live long and they don't stay healthy.
Yep. Appreciate it. Well, I hope you had fun. Those are 5 fun, quick questions. I think put you a little bit to the test.
You did. Well, especially with the first one. I've only asked hundreds of people that question.
Right.
And you stumped me on my own question. It must be a good one.
It is a good one. It's a great question.
Well, that's good.
That's good. Well, I've got one more question for you, Eric. Before that, tell us, what's the best way to reach out to you?
For folks who want to learn more about BFG and what we do, the website is bfgfa.com. And for folks interested in the publishing and the white papers and the online courses and all the other resources, that's at brotmanmedia.com.
You got it. I'll have links to all that in the show notes.
Wonderful.
And of course, if you'd like more ideas on how to avoid big retirement mistakes, go ahead right now, click that subscribe button, and you'll get all my latest episodes and videos. And of course, you've got your book. We'll have links to the books in the show notes as well. And I love education, love books, love giving away books. So the first 3 people that email me, podcast@keilfp.com, KEILFP.com, we will send you out a copy of that book. And of course, if you don't hit the first 3, that's right. We'll have the link there to click it through and get your book for yourself. Well, final question for you, Eric. Tell us something about yourself that few people know about. And remember, this podcast is rated clean.
Oh, absolutely clean. I studied late 18th century romantic poetry in college. Wordsworth, Shelley, Byron, Keats, Blake, and Coleridge, and most people don't know that. And I wrote a paper in college in iambic pentameter.
Oh my goodness, that's great. I see where you got into the book writing and the media side of things.
Absolutely, I love to write and thought I would teach, and now I get to teach every day. I'm just teaching personal finance.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, thanks for coming on, sharing with us how you can not retire, but actually graduate. And you got the book there. We'll put links, and hopefully people will start graduating instead of retiring.
I love it. Thanks, Jeremy, for having me. It was great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric, and thank you for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you will feel better about your money, and you will make better money decisions.